Hello and welcome to Upstage Downstage.
With me, Richard Platt, seated in the upper circle.
And me, Stephen Rees, seated in a cheap seat. This is the Theatre Podcast, where we discuss productions we've seen, things we've liked and may not have liked, giving our complete unprofessional and non-biased opinions.
So grab a brew, take a seat and let's raise that curtain.
On today's episode, we'll be discussing the second episode of our Pantomime Special, Dick Whittington. We saw this production at Nottingham Playhouse on the 14th of January 2023. Packed with dazzling dance, a brilliant live band and swashbuckling adventure, the show reunites us with Nottingham's favourite panto dame, John Elkington, who will be serving up some comedy chaos as Sarah the cook. So Richard, what's it all about?
Pack up your hanky and join plucky Dick Whittington and his trusty cat on their quest for fame and fortune. Their magical rags to riches tale takes us to London, where the streets are paved with gold.
But first, our post-show opinion!
The best Dick I've seen in years.
That Dick was thrice-laughingly good.
So with all that said, let's
Set the scene!
This was quite exciting for us because we actually sat in the upper circle, or is it the balcony? What are they calling it? Upstairs?
It's the balcony.
Yeah,
I think it's just called the balcony.
Just the balcony, yeah, because we normally sit in the stalls at the Nottingham Playhouse, but this time we got to experience the upper class.
Yeah.
Although they said it was the cheap seats, were they the cheap seats?
They weren't the cheap seats. They were just the same price as below, so they weren't actually...
But it was it was nice being up there.
It was nice being up there. It was fine, yeah.
Yeah, and a beautiful view of the actual set. Now, this set was very detailed. It just made me think of those like really nice decorative Christmas cards that were 3D, or your advent calendars. You know, not the ones with the chocolates.
No,
not
at all.
Nice pictures.
Very illustrated.
Very illustrated. It had lights
and painstakingly hand painted as well. You could tell that it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
It wasn't just thrown up there and just It wasn't.
And this is just at the very beginning.
Yeah, she's just walking it. Yeah.
Yeah, once they raise the curtain for the the typical painted backdrop of the castles and so on and so forth. The set's got more bigger and detailed and 3D.
Normally what you see with the opening of a production or when you walk into an auditorium, you've got either a tab that just covers the entire stage that just says either, I don't
curtain,
know,
safety or
curtain,
safety.
Well, not just safety curtain, but it might just be the production name or like the panto name, so it might just be one level. Whereas the opening of this, when you walk in, even before they started opening the stage up to bigger parts of the production, it already felt 3D.
Oh yeah,
because you'd got loads of angles and loads of different bits where you'd got the pop-up effect. There's just a little bit of edging around the top of the stage where it was all cut out pieces of scenery that just like gave you a lot of distance and depth before the production started. So, and I think that was
very colourful, very decorated and detailed, and
also a lot of the lines that covered a lot of the set was covered in glitter, so it was shiny, it felt glitzy, it just felt polished.
Yes.
And like you say, you were just going to say there was lights behind some of the bits as well on stage.
Yeah, they was quite good with the technical lighting.
Which was a bit similar to, like, I know we've referenced Book and Woman before, but it was very similar to the edging of that, where there was a lot of light in the actual...
silhouetted coming out from the
and like on the stained glass. It was like almost like across the top, But
I think they was just panelled in one colour, but it's like when there was like a dark, gloomy scene, it felt like Halloween because those lights end up being green.
Yeah.
But then other times it was like
bright colours,
or red, or it just changed to fit whatever scene was, I suppose.
Definitely.
So yes, straight away the set just looked absolutely stunning, and this was written by Adam Penfold and directed by him as well. And we've seen quite a few of his plays, and I think he directed the Clothes They Stood Up In. I think certainly a lot of the stuff we've seen at the Nottingham Playhouse anyway. So
I think it's a very confident thing to write it because it's not a mean feat. It's not an easy feat to it's quite.
No, I mean you've got your bog standards, like we've said on previous episode. Panto, you can just duplicate and do.
Yes.
But this is from the ground up writing.
Yeah, you can tell that it's had a lot of input to actually create this panto.
Yes, I mean, I can't remember too much about the actual storyline of Dick Whittington. I understand it. I mean, answer me this: what's the bit about Puss in Boots, or is that a completely different fairy tale thing?
Oh,
is that,
Puss in Boots. Dick Whittington.
Is it Dick Whittington and Puss in Boots, or is Puss in Boots like something completely different?
No,
like
Puss in
Bag
Boots is different. Puss in Boots
different.
it is different
Right,
storyline.
okay.
Dick Whittington is about him going off to London. Puss in Boots is a puss. There's
In
a
Boots?
cat in Boots. Yeah. So there's a difference in storyline of fairy tale.
It's because they all seem they all merge for me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. I get
a bit.
There's a crossovers and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know where one begins, one ends.
Dick Whittington has got a cat that's his sidekick, whereas Puss in Boots is the actual character. That's the actual.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah,
Although
this is.
the puss was still in Boots.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this is one of those productions that, as long as you stick around the storyline, you've got a lot of creative freedom to do, whatever you want, really. And I think this was a fine example of that.
They used a lot of local reference points.
Yeah,
and,
they did.
Stuff.
But they used clever references. It wasn't just cliches or.
No, you can tell it was very homegrown, and they knew which bits were either deprived or which bits weren't open for a long period of time.
Yeah. Even to the mentions of the Clifton Bridge that's been under
exactly,
loads
yeah.
of major upheaval and loads of a lot of work and stuff like that. Little references to things like that
as
in
well,
Broadmarsh
which is
Centre,
still...
which has been shut for God knows how long. And
I think there's still a couple of shops in there last time
but
I
most
went.
of it's been flawed, hasn't it? So it's like,
Yeah.
I think it was picking out references that they were just silly and funny references as well, and it was clever,
Yeah, and I think that's why this particular pantomime than the previous one was more enjoyable, because it was local. It was like the money was well spent.
Yeah.
The cast and the crew gelled extremely well together. There was more familiarity.
Yeah.
And there wasn't any stealing of limelight, shall we say, with the two main leads, because it also everybody got to have their chance to shine, and they all had their characters.
They spent time on the interaction scenes with each of those characters when they came on. They didn't just throw away those moments, so they spent time with each other and enjoyed it, and you could tell they were enjoying it. I think as well with the writing, they never stopped throwing jokes in, and it was almost like a machine gun of jokes sometimes. You were processing one and they were still launching into the next, and that's where it makes it funny and silly, and you can pick up things and enjoy it every time, even though some of them are the silliest jokes or the most they're not far from unexpected. You know what the punchlines are.
Nice bit of innuendo as well, and things that.
But there was definitely the two levels of, the silliness that kids would laugh at, and there's also silliness that the adults would laugh at, but the kids wouldn't understand what we're on about,
Well, exactly.
And that was just in a passing comment, not necessarily a joke.
That's the best way to handle a pantomime. You've got jokes that hit all sort of levels and age groups. Some people might get the joke, some people might not, but you're there to entertain the adults as well as not just the kids, because it's easy to entertain the kids by the interactions and the thing, and sometimes the adults might get a little bit bored by that, or especially if they're not really engaged, but they do appreciate the jokes that do actually land at their direction.
Exactly, they do, and they do enjoy the cleverness of the level where they reference things in real life that sound like they're maybe just another character from another panto, where actually they're referencing them for the adults to laugh at.
The actual writing of this, if we talk about the plot points, I understood the plot. You knew where it was going because they basically kept it going. They didn't waste time extending a scene for the sake of it.
No.
They knew exactly that each scene was written specifically to advance the storyline along.
It was.
And you could tell that with the characters as well. Like the fairy and the narrator, she came in a lot more.
And she had a lot. She had a role.
Well, she did, yeah. She was a narrator, so she got to do that. Whereas in last week's Snow White, the fairy didn't particularly do much at all. She was pretty much useless. But this one, actually, you felt her presence, and she did interact with the characters. She was there, and she did have wand issues.
And
maybe if it was 5G,
it could have. But I think as well, it's a key point where she advanced the story, and she had things that she did as the fairy that influenced what happened on stage as well. So that was very useful. I just think as well, if we talk about the stage or a set being a chocolate box, this production felt like a chocolate box was opening every time you opened another layer. It was a little bit like like a folded up piece of paper and we're getting another scene and another scene and another scene. And they never seemed to stop throughout the production. You know, there was a lot of staging and set for this production, and it was all richly decorated and richly put together.
It's because
all
the characters
the way
went on
through.
a journey.
They went on a journey.
They actually went on a journey.
They did. You know, some scenes were really small, but they still had the full set for them. You know, and it made so much difference to feel like each zone or area that they were travelling to was there, and it felt realised, you know.
Yeah, and there was a reason for everything.
Yeah, exactly. So we went to London. You had the backdrop of London, but also simple things like at the opening of it, you had a drop cloth that basically had a hole in it that was almost...
like a glory hole.
It went into a glorious place.
It was a big enough.
It was, yeah. It created an opening to the production that made you think, oh, what's next and what's going to happen? And it felt like
through the spy hole,
even things like
Pantomime.
it was. But when you had the village scene at the start, you saw the Emporium at the back, just the front of the shop.
That's right.
But you didn't realise it was going to actually come into set and become the Emporium and open up like the side of a pop-up book where it's like...
It reminds me of those little things you used to get in the 90s, like My Little Pocket.
Yeah.
Those little figures and those little, like, My Little Pets or something that were all magnetised and you opened it up.
Definitely.
And,
like Polly Pocket and stuff.
That's what I meant, yeah, Polly Pocket.
Yeah, it did.
My Little...
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Pony. Yeah, Polly Pocket, that's the one.
It also reminded me of the Postman book, the one where every page you turned, there was another thing to open and there was another thing, and it just became so much more.
That's why I
than
said at the start
expected.
it was like an advent calendar.
Yeah, it was.
You know, or a classy $3.
But also to say
Christmas
that
card.
the scene pieces they brought in matched everything else. It felt like you were still in that world. It didn't feel like they just brought some random set on or random bits. Everything felt just as well designed as what you saw at the start. I think,
to be fair, because it's a panto, there's certain expectations where you have to be glitzy, glamorous, you've got to be colourful, you've got to be joyful, you've got to be entertaining, because that's the whole point of a panto.
Exactly.
If it never had any of that, it would be bloody miserable.
It feels flat, and it feels...
Exactly.
You know,
but this is why they do the sets like that, to encourage you to be happy during the bleak midwinter, shall we say.
And also, when a production runs for night, this one ran, I think, it's about a month and a half. It's about a month and a half it runs. So, in a way, you expect a production of this size to make enough money to afford to have the lavish sets and the lavish feel of a production. It needs that glitz and glam. You feel like you're getting your money's worth in a way.
Also, if you think about it, like any playhouse, they'd probably put like a new piece of work on and they'd do it for about 2 or 3 weeks.
Yes, yeah, they would.
Sometimes, you know, in touring theatres, it'd be like on for a week.
Yeah.
But there's 3 weeks for just like a normal play, whereas this is 6 weeks, so it's probably just had double the expenses.
Yeah, so you know,
so you've got to see it on stage.
Yeah, you want to feel that you're getting that polish and that level of performance. You know, you don't want to feel shortchanged from that.
I mean, they're already advertising for next year, and I'm sure it's in the writing stage.
Yeah,
as we
definitely,
speak, you know,
because it's got to be in a way. Because I mean, you can see. I feel that not only have you got to have that glitz and glam on stage, you've also got to have the glitz and glam in the performances from the cast. So that means your script has got to be as strong and robust as it can be, so that when they have fun with it or stop and start it, it can be as polished as possible. And there was moments in this production where they stopped, they had a bit of a laugh, they wound each other up a little bit, and then we went back to the script.
Bits happened on the set with the rats flying off. on the strings and
they
stuff,
just
you know.
and sort of, you know, interacting with the audience, where somebody was made to sleepwalk back to the dame was made to sleepwalk back to their bedroom. And the dame heard an audience react, and she's basically said, "I'm going to do this again." Yeah. So she just dragged it out a bit longer, but it was funny and it worked. But then it was straight back into the script, and off we go again. And
what I'll say about that is, it's normally only the dame then that can get away with doing stuff like that.
Yeah, it is.
You know, you won't see like the prince or the princess or whoever's in a particular panto,
because there's certain people in a panto that are troublemakers. In the sense of
it's the ones that
they
add
can
the
mess and they can play, and they can play because you can cause the chaos.
Yeah,
and then everybody else brings it back. You know, and it's a very big test of actors and performers on stage. It's how if you can do a panto and do it well, you can cope with that. and remember where you're actually meant to be, so you can pick it back up, and you're not jumping 3-4 pages of script. You're back to the where you need to be on the page, and that's very
absolutely. And I'll say a shout out to John Elkington, who was Sarah the cook.
Completely.
Now he's been the dame for Nottingham Playhouse for so many years now, but I've last time I went there, 2007ish, something like that, and there was like a double act on him and this other chap, but they always give such a great performance.
Yes.
And even as a dame, he's just brilliant.
Yeah,
as
definitely.
Being the dame, he's got the confidence, but also he's got the stand-up ability to
Yeah,
be able
exactly.
to feedback for anybody,
and it's
giving him an issue in the audience.
And it's also the observation and the listening of being able to pick up on the slightest thing that happens and almost capitalise on that. It's a chance to cash in on some funny moments. One of the things I noticed that, I love the off-the-cuff bits, and they had the traditional bit where you bring 3 children on stage to help in one of the silly dances they do, but they interviewed each of them. And the third one was from a brownie group, and the dame asked this girl where she was from and where her friends are in the audience, and the audience ate straight into the dame's hand, because there was one group at one side of the audience, one group at the other side of the audience, and just a simple comment had everybody laughing, because all she said was, well, have you two fell out? What's gone off? Because all she did was pick up and create a joke out of nothing, and that's the beauty of being somebody who can just make silliness out of not a lot, really.
Yeah, what got me was that I think there was like 2 sets of brownies in.
Yeah,
and probably neither of them knew which one she was actually from.
Exactly, but it was just silly, but it was funny, and and I think they're the moments that when they're really paying attention to the audience, which then brings the audience in by doing that. You feel part of it.
Yeah, and talking about like audience participation throughout the whole of this one, you had all the chase scenes, you had the it's behind you scenes, you had all those kind of interactions and building everything up and stuff that's in a typical panto.
Yeah,
and
you had the sleep scene with the gorilla, and you had the breaking of a vase, which took a long time to break, but then when it broke, it came out of nowhere.
That was more of like the slapstick element, like you're baking a cake scene or you're wallpapering or whatever.
Exactly.
That's one of those typical
You're
scenes.
making food, and we're going to do this, that, and the other, and
a mud pie or something.
Yeah, but it's all the bits that you see the Chuckle Brothers do, or you see those scenes where it's slapstick, it's funny, it's silly, but the children eat it up and they love it, because it's when you see actors let themselves go and don't think about anything about what they've done before. They're just enjoying the production and being silly in that world.
And you saw this throughout all of them. I mean, even like the actor playing Silly Billy, he was on point all the time.
Yeah.
He kept his energy up. He kept the audience interaction. Every time he walked on, he came on with like a spring in his step.
It was like a switch going on stage.
But also, he had the ability to talk back to the audience if they weren't sort of like going along with him or whatever.
Yeah, he didn't worry about breaking what he was doing to interact, and
because he's sort of allowed to, in that essence, like the Dame, because he tells the audience right from the start who to call him, and every time he comes on, call me this.
Exactly.
So it's like
he's already welcoming the audience in to actually be part of it.
But if I could just compare from the previous panto, a bit like how Muggles was in Snow White, this Silly Billy character, they were the same characters, but he didn't overshadow anybody else, because he had his role, and that was a perfect role.
Yeah, exactly.
But he didn't take over everyone else's time by doing silly little things or too much silly things like Joe Pasquale did as Muggles.
Exactly. Because there was even moments where you noticed, even when there was no dialogue, the Dame playing his mum, there was times when you felt like his mum's now talking, so I'm not going to. And Silly Billy backed off a little bit.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because he was intimidated, it was more the fact that it's mum's turn now.
Yeah.
And it was very much like we all take our turns and we get the best out of everybody then if we all just work together.
Right,
and that's what it felt like. It felt like they understood the world of panto and how you have to manipulate an audience to enjoy it and just follow you along and just have fun with them and almost make them enjoy it and know that they're all enjoying it. I think that's important.
I'd also like to say the villain of the piece was the King Rat.
Yes.
Christopher Chandler. And he had a lot of energy, and there was like a spark about him where he did say a few awful things, I suppose.
Yeah.
But to the point where, something smells in here, I bet you lot haven't you cleaned
your
your
bums?
bums or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I didn't expect that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So maybe I probably need to get out more. But it's one of them where, okay, so we can use that kind of language.
But also, I think as well with that...
That probably sounds silly.
No, it doesn't.
Because obviously you can use that language, but in my head, years ago, you probably wouldn't have gone that far. But I suppose with time changing or whatever, you probably can.
But I think as well, this is where characterisation in panto matters, because like you said, the ones that can, like the Dame and the Silly Billy characters, can break up and be silly. You can also have somebody that everybody boos and everybody doesn't like what they say.
Yeah.
And if that is lackluster and it doesn't have that, like, oh, you're all like
scum,
scum, I don't like you. And then, if you don't have that, you haven't got the light and shade. You haven't got the dark and the comedy or the tragedy. You haven't got that difference.
Yeah.
It becomes flat. Because there was some tender moments with him where he actually told you his story, which I thought was really good, because
that was a good backstory.
That's never really been done. Panto doesn't always go to the depths of looking at the other side of somebody who is the terrible person. They normally just ride over that. And what they did really well, I thought, was they told his story in a bit of a animated video production on stage that was really well done. And it just told how he became the Rat King, and it added more depth to the production because of that. Because
I think
normally
you
just
character.
Yeah.
As you say, you can just gloss over it with just one line.
Yeah.
I was hard done by when I was a little lad when I became the rat. And
they didn't need to throw that in, but I thought it needed it to. It was good.
Sometimes it all stems down to, I think, the wants and needs of the character.
Yeah, exactly.
And I felt like we got that with all of them.
Yeah,
even though
definitely.
it was a small, tiny little thing. Like even with the cat, he wanted to perform on a West End stage.
Yeah, exactly.
So
everybody
that was his
got
drive
a purpose almost
for him being like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you just felt like because you got Silly Billy's character wanted to fall in love with Alice, was falling in love with Alice all the way through the production, which is a traditional characterization for him, because it's always the want to but never get the girl. And you've got the Dame whose ultimate aim is to be married to somebody, which happens as it normally happens in a panto, and and that scene was great where they used Timeless to Me from Hairspray, where
I like that. That was a really good
duetted and timed to do that performance, because it worked really well in this production. And I thought you'd almost got them having all their own journeys within the production. And yes, it was about Dick Whittington and Alice ultimately getting married, but everybody else seemed to have an outcome of some description, And
it made the whole production more fulfilled.
Yeah, it did.
Rather than it being like whole milk or skimmed, It was very much the whole milk sort of.
Yeah, they'd thought about all the storylines rather than one, because even the cat got his performance at the end. And that was all very sort of.
And that was out of Cabaret.
Yeah, it was. Oh God.
I know, it was in Connie and Carla. Don't tell me what to think.
Rain on My Parade. It's...
Rain on My Parade. Yentl? No. Oh, God. Yentl?
It's only because that's mentioned in Connie and Carla.
I know. But it's Barbara Streisand.
Funny
That's
girl.
it. Yeah, Barbara Streisand,
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. That's why I went to Yentl.
Yeah.
My history on musical theatre isn't very good,
Oh, you get that eventually.
Yeah. Actually, do you know what I would say? For this production, they had a classic Dick.
They did have a classic
female Dick.
They did.
I'm quite pleased to see a female Dick.
I am.
Because it was only the other day where I was saying, well, you never see any females playing the princes. They do actually cast boys now. And it's it's nice that they've kept being
Peter Pan,
traditional.
isn't it?
Well, exactly,
you expect Peter Pan to be Cilla Black or somebody like that, where they are those.
Well, she's dead now.
No, but she's.
You wouldn't want to dig her back out to be Peter Pan.
No, but she's always been that. They're the characters that play. You'd always expected them in the past to be the Peter Pans or the princes.
Oh, you really are a mucky lad. We would be if you did. But anyway, back to the Dick. Dick Whittington. To be honest, I thought the whole cast was just brilliant.
I think, I've mentioned before, a panto production is an ensemble piece, and it's all about the cast working together well. And this one,
the vocals were on point when they did the singing.
Everything.
I can't say everyone was pitch perfect because I don't understand like musical terminology and notes. I wouldn't know, but I didn't feel like there was an out of place note. I didn't feel like anyone was not singing properly, or there was a broken voice or something.
Yeah,
everything was perfect.
There was a confidence about their performances from each one when they were performing. There was no hesitation. They came out, they did their pieces, they sang, they did well all the way through, and I thought each of them shone, really.
If I was to make one criticism in this, I suppose it might be a little bit bad, but I felt Tom the Cat could have embellished the role more as the cat and played up to the role as a cat
Yeah, I know what
more
you mean.
so.
Yes.
Because I thought out of all of them, he was my least favourite character. Not actor, but character.
Yeah.
I didn't like the costume.
No, I think
the performance could have been a bit more feline.
Yeah, I think there was the odd moment where he'd almost rub up against somebody like with his head or something to look like he's playing the cat, but he didn't do it enough. It was like there was moments where
I more heard it in like the vocal delivery. There could have been more of a purr, more nuance like that in more the.
I think movement wise as well.
Speech.
Sometimes there was times where he'd walk around stage but be less feline, like it was just putting his paws up, and that was relying on the paws, but not actually the movements as much. Sometimes went with it. Maybe, I
feel slightly bad for having to say that, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm sure if other people were viewing this, they might find somebody else.
But then remember, we are like picking on very minute detail. This is
exactly we're picking on the fur balls.
This is something that. As a really well-made piece of theatre, we're going to go to the finer details.
And let's just say I'm not specifically going out to look at any negatives or anything.
No,
that's
not at all.
It's just
as an aesthetic thing, that was the one person that was a little bit
like the vocal delivery of the character, and I think the costume probably just wasn't doing it
maybe
for me.
just. I mean, it's like in dialogue there wasn't a lot of.
But
reference
it's subjective, it's personal preference, and I didn't enjoy that.
In
I
a
thought
way,
the cat could have been a bit better.
In a way, I think the thing that for me that was a little confusing, that he was dressed as a Pearly King without a Cockney accent, with all the buttons and everything that he was on. So that it was almost like they went for the costume for being London and Pearly Kings and Queens and Cockney, and there was not much of a reference, whereas the fairy had a London accent.
Oh, she definitely did,
definitely London.
But don't forget, Tom the Cat was travelling to London, so he wasn't coming from London.
But dressed as a Pearly King and Queen.
But then again, why didn't all the pearls on the costume be where all his 8 nipples would have been?
Exactly, and that's where it was just that could have
if
made it.
That could have been a bit more fun, having like the instead of the pocket buttons,
it could have been
the actual, all 8 buttons as in nipples.
Exactly. More obvious to make something of it. So.
And like with the hat,
it was almost like the ears weren't big enough to create that feel of the feline.
I think something style. If you're going to do it a bit bigger, maybe with the ears or the tail was okay.
Exactly.
I think there was something a little not.
I think when everybody else's costume was really on point, that was the one that felt disconnected in a little tiny way. Even if they had a fake fur coat that he wore at first, and then he went into smaller costumes. It's like you could have had played with it a bit more.
You think? I mean, this is going to sound a bit silly, like Cat from Red Dwarf. Loved dressing up, loved who he was and how he moved and whatever. And I don't expect that in the
No, of course not.
You could have also played about with maybe the teeth, or if he had like the fur, like you said, if it was different coloured fur or something,
exactly.
Go to the extreme. But
or just have almost costume pieces that he wore throughout, rather than even if it was just to make it feel like different.
Or have the cat have his own little what was it? Bundle on a stick. Have his own where he's got his own little fishy cat treats or something exactly. A little more feline and related rather than
or even if it was a fish on a stick,
exactly.
those
that
sort
would
of
have been
things
good. Tin of Pilchards or something, as if he's trying to fit in, but is still a cat. Whereas the character walking along just tried to be, I know I'm a cat, but I don't want to be. I want to be a singer.
Exactly.
And whilst, it's okay wanting to be a singer, he's still, it would have been better for me if he was just going all out on impersonating a cat, trying to be something else instead of just not going there as such. But other than that...
Oh, yeah, totally.
And I thought Alice Rosanna Bates was crystal clear in her delivery, in her movement, and how she... sang and
Yeah.
who was Alice, and it's slightly weird in a way because she did have a great rapport with her father, T.J. Lloyd being the Alderman Fitzwarren. But yeah, there was a sort of a connection there, but it's one of them where her storyline wasn't that big, it wasn't that central, because it wasn't. Even though she was going to be, she's a love interest and she's going to choose.
Yeah.
Who she didn't overstay her welcome, if that makes sense.
No, she didn't. No, she was there for when it needed to be.
Lisa Ambler Vannar as Dick Whittington, I thought she performed with great enthusiasm, very lively. Yeah. Did she slap her thigh? I'm not quite sure.
I think she might have done it once.
Then I must have blinked. I don't remember seeing one that. Thigh slap. And Fairy Bowbells, Natalie Windsor. She was a great fairy. She didn't speak in rhyming couplets.
Which I was almost expecting to.
But she did do a good Cockney accent.
Yeah, she really did.
And she kept that up.
yeah, definitely.
The one role which I thought was a bit underused, but I don't know how I feel now, actually, having seen this, but T.J. Lloyd played Alderman Fitzwarren, who was the father.
Yes.
He looked like he could have comic potential. In certain scenes that he had, he did feel a bit like funny, like when he was doing the Lord Mayor. Mayor, that kind of thing. But I don't know if it was underused or maybe there wasn't that much there to give.
Yeah, I suppose.
How do you feel about that?
I get that. I think there was a few moments where he was on stage and maybe not as integral and maybe could have been introduced.
Because there was a bit in the ship where he was wearing this nightgown and he was with Sarah the cook.
Yeah.
And she said, do a spin. And then he did the spin, and then she ad-libbed. And I mean, they probably rehearse and they do it all the time, but I bet you get a bit dizzy there or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And it says he did a bit, but it was one of them where, I wonder what it would be like if he felt more confident to give more ad-libs or whatever.
Definitely. No, I know what you mean.
Or been in the position to be a kind of a Dane where he could retort a bit more.
Yeah.
I feel like there's probably more there than we were allowed to see or could see.
Yeah.
I just got this sneak feeling.
I know what you mean. I think
when they sang together, it was good.
There was a scene in the shop, in Fitzwarren's shop at the start, which was a bit similar, where he was there, but he was not necessarily overly involved.
Almost. He was there, but he wasn't there.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose we don't really know much about his journey.
No, we don't. Although he does want to get married.
Yeah. And he fancies Sarah the cook.
Well,
see?
Who wouldn't?
Exactly.
I'm sure we'd all want to be the 17th
I mean, one
husband.
thing I'd like to say from Sarah the cook's costumes were fantastic.
They were well thought out all the way through.
And each one made sense at the point it made sense.
In the particular scene, yeah.
And that's very key to the whole, production.
Yeah, when they were going to London, it was like the London map of A to Z that she was wearing.
On the underground, and then...
Yeah, and then in the jungle, she was like...
she was being carried on, sat in a gorilla. And then and when she went on the boat, she was in a full sou'wester and with rubber rings and all sorts. And it was just, everything made sense. It wasn't like her entrances were like, oh, she's got another nice costume on. It was like, it was right at the right point. And
a baby doll costume for when she's going to sleep. That was really nice, pretty in pink sort of a thing. But then I think it was the full funny scene where she was sitting on the log and she came in like the clamshell with an octopus on her head. And then when she sat down, she was hidden.
Yeah, but actually that turned into being part of the next part of it, to be the comedy sketch scene, to have where the gorilla appeared and she couldn't see the gorilla but she's fussing it, and that was so much part of that.
Exactly, and that's so much better done to do the he's behind you sort of a thing, where all it took was just one log that they were sat on. Right?
It's simple.
And then for that whole scene, which was a great scene, little sketch, and to take it off, she said, I better log off now.
Yeah, exactly. And it was it made sense and it was to the point, and that was the thing. It didn't last long, but it made the audience shout, that the gorilla's behind them and all that. I think for me, this is where Panto's got them. I saw kids in front of me jump up and be pointing, and you could see them pointing that he's behind you, he's there, and
No, that was an old couple in front of us.
No, there's a couple of kids further down, and you could just see them.
Were there?
Yeah, there was. There was a couple of kids in front of you.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's the fact that you can hear them shouting.
Yeah,
we could hear a lot of kids shouting in this.
Oh yeah,
they knew that they're like very animated, and you know that when they're doing that, they're included and they're in there,
they're still in,
and they want to tell them that bad thing's going to get you, and it's behind you,
and the good thing
that's
about
important,
And the good thing about that is the fact that when they did that whole, it's behind you, and they walk one way then another, it's like the third time they see it.
Yeah.
Sometimes they over egg it.
Yeah, exactly.
And you think, oh come
There's
on,
a fine line.
it's so easy just to turn around.
Yeah, exactly.
And they did it just enough. When it's repeated the third time for the dame, it's the egg that runs off because they've seen the actual
the look of the dame,
Sarah the cook. Yeah, it's like,
exactly.
oh, you scared me.
Yeah, and then that makes the audience laugh because it's not just the kids laugh at it because it seems silly, but the audience are looking at it going, well, they looked at her face and they've ran off, and that's just an adult level that is just another bit of fun, And I think.
And what do you think about the costume for the Rat King?
I thought it was brilliant. I think he's.
And the thing is, he doesn't change his costume like everyone else.
No,
so it's just
same as the fairy. Don't change the costume.
It's just one.
But one thing,
Cut down on the
for
money.
me, but it's not just that. It's attention to detail because the Rat King's costume, the cape he was wearing was lined with black glittery material that it's like sequin material that was on the inside of the cape. And this is for me the little details. That was only seen when he's swishing his but when you only see it when he's swishing his costume, but it was enough to lift and make it feel more rich and more well designed than just a flat piece of cloth, and that's the thing. That's the whole point of panto. It's that extra level and
razzle dazzle.
I think also one mention is Silly Billy's costume, where he generally stayed in the same costume,
the orange one.
Yeah, in the orange costume. But then when he went to bed
I thought he looked very attractive in that, to be honest.
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, but when he went to sleep and he came out in a night blue costume with sheep and ladders all over it, like gates where they were climbing over the gates and he was counting sheep. It was that level of detail that we didn't see in Snow White, where that character, that Silly Billy, that Muddles character, the Buttons character, had got his own costume changes to make you feel like he's
more important.
Yeah, he's part of it, and it's not just just the silly person that's the jester. They've still got a part to play.
How he goes to sleep and how he gets to sleep is also silly.
Yeah, exactly, because it's him. He's like, well, I'm ready for bed. I've got my my sheep on me,
and keep them awake.
But it makes you feel like there's a level of attention as
exactly.
well.
And the thing is, that could have just been one simple outfit where it's just striped pajamas or an over garment, or something.
Didn't have to go to that level.
Exactly.
But it was worth it, and it worked,
And also, I'd like to say, the extras, so those that were doing the rats, the ensemble, great rat costumes, and they doubled up for the not toy soldiers. What do you call them? They were
sailors.
They were the sailors, but there was also the musicians with the trumpet.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Is there a word for it? They look like those the Nutcracker toy soldier things.
They did. I know what you mean. The ones that did the fanfare, I know what you mean.
Like bellboys, aren't they? Is that what?
Yeah, similar. Yeah,
something like that. So,
but they all had even the chorus, the dancers that were involved. Each costume made sense for them, and the rats changed their body proportions, so they looked like rats, and it was just like everything felt right to what they were performing and
absolutely,
stuff like that.
Yeah. What do you think about the fairy's costume?
I think it could have had more.
Yeah, and the reason why I say that...
it, but I think that... Because she went off a lot of times, so she could have actually...
She exited the stage, you mean? You don't mean like she just went off on one?
She left... Yeah, she went... she went off a lot.
She's off on one again.
Like a little firework,
Oh, she's like a cracker on that one, yeah. Because every time I think of the fairy, I always think of Glenda from Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
And that was a huge gown. I always think any fairy is going to have this huge ball gown that they can barely get through the doors. But again, they don't have to do it to satisfy me.
No, of course not. No, exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
I think they do it for familiarity, so it's that person. It's a bit like the Rat King, it's the same costume
but I suppose
throughout.
you don't want a dress that's going to be too big that it's going to engulf the actress. She looked all right in it
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, none of the costumes were all fitting to any of them. That's the thing. They were all well made to the character. They felt like the person that was wearing them well.
And I think that goes down to the Playhouse as well, the ability to make their own costumes. 'Cause
Yes.
I don't think, I mean, I remember Derby Playhouse at the time, they had their own costume, wardrobe room and seamstress and stuff, and they handmade their own costumes for everything they did. You know, I think them costumes probably got sold off, but you can actually go to these costume places and just hire any old tat. Yeah. You know, and you see that when you do hire the kind of tat for the bigger things, everything becomes a bit baggy, it
becomes a bit samey as well,
and also nothing fits right.
No.
You know, and if you get costumes that are specifically tailored for you.
A bit like the set. I mean, let's face it. There's lots of panto sets out there you can go and hire now. You can literally.
Can you?
Yeah, there's lots of those. The scenic production like companies that own sets for pantos.
Oh, especially there'll be like a great big.
You can even get sets for like a lot of the musicals that are out there. Even if you want to do it on an amateur level, you can literally hire the entire set. You know, there's places that have just got them stored in warehouses, and it's
I suppose they do with the props as well.
Yeah,
like
they
a great
do.
Big pumpkin and golden carriage
exactly.
for Cinderella. And another bit of the thing that I would actually like to point out, which I might be referencing Snow White here, in the dream state where the fairy manages to speak to Dick Whittington on his throne, saying, "You've got to go back," after they've caught him out stealing the money.
Yeah,
he's on this chair and
asleep,
and it gets lifted up.
But what they do, what the fairy does is show Dick Whittington what would happen in his dream state, who he should be. It's his true state.
So it's I haven't finished, but that's what I was.
He was asleep,
say,
and then he ends up. You see him. She sings a song, and he disappears and ends up on a throne in the dream sequence, basically.
Yeah, but my point that I was going to get to was the fact that was more fitting than the one in Snow White where they used a car to move out and around.
As a journey scene, which made no sense.
Exactly, but
this actually felt like it was part of the production, and it was the right piece for the right point, and it had the right meaning. If you're going to use an effect or something that's a surprise, in essence, the effect was used in the same place as Snow White before the interval, and it was done at the right place. But this one felt exactly part of it, and in a way, I was a little shocked because what they'd done, they'd really cleverly done it, where they'd set up the Lord Mayor as Dick Whittington in his throne room, surrounded by the room itself with a set around it. You didn't know that chair was going to lift, really, because at first it just looked like it was a quick glimpse scene of what he would become. You didn't then realise that all those set pieces would go away. The stage went black and he flew up and flew around the stage and into the audience, and you didn't see that coming, and I think that was really clever on how they did it, really.
That's why I'm saying, like, that didn't stick out like a sore thumb. That was like
it didn't feel like they bought the effect for no reason.
That's right, yeah. And your other kind of technical things, there was a little thing that jarred a few times. I suppose it was an error, really, when they were trying to get one part of the set off when they were on the ship.
Yes.
You could see them trying to tug in from the
there was
wing.
Meant to be a scene where both sides of basically the scene was set that the ship was actually in the harbour
on the docks,
with the platforms in front of it and the barrels and things like that in front of it, and then they got on the boat and they set sail. And what should have happened, like two bookends, you should have moved both sides of the sort of dock area away.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they only got they got stage right off, so the half of it on one side off, but the stage left wouldn't go.
That was stuck on something else sticking out.
I don't know if there was actually something happened backstage where there was too many people behind it, or because a lot of people went off that side. Like all the kids went off.
I think it got caught. I think some of the wheels probably got caught on something that was either on the flooring or a piece of the stage.
Because there was times where they moved it forward and back, so like they were trying to get it off something.
Yeah, because there was a narrow gap between the ship / the back of the stage set curtain or whatever, and the piece of flat that was sticking out, protruding. That it needed to sort of get behind there, whether it was like.
And also, I know from my experience of that stage, there's actually probably only about 8 to 10 foot that side of stage to actually manoeuvre anything off that side of stage. Yeah. That is actually the shortest wing size. So they probably there was a lot of odd and it's actually really close to where the door is to go off to the changing rooms. So it's actually really there's a lot of things happening. Yeah. It could have been a lot of stuff happening and the problem is. They can't really tell each other, get out of the way or move out of the way because they've got to do it all in silence. So
they really probably should have thought about that.
But they did
were
it.
building
It might not have happened previous night or the night before. It's just that night something happened.
No, I mean, it just looked like they were trying to get it out from the wrong angle.
Yeah,
It just needed like just turning up a bit. I mean, it was just a whatever.
Technically, I mean, lighting and sound wise, I thought
I was impressed
brilliant.
by the lighting.
Yeah, and also from a sense of they were all mic'd and they all had head mics. And what annoys me sometimes is when you have mics on stage is there's always something that happens with a technical aspect where somebody forgets to switch a mic on when somebody walks on stage, and we had none of that. Every time the cast were on, they were mic'd well, and you heard every word they said, and you knew that it was just really well blended, and the harmonies when they were singing, and they worked together really well on some of the big ensemble pieces where they're singing as a whole group. They obviously listen to each other when they're singing because there wasn't anybody vying to be the better singer in the lot. They were just all enjoying it,
Yeah.
And I think that's key from a technical aspect because that's where you get the most errors, where batteries stop working or things stop going right, or you always have a signal problem or something happen, and that's important, and it spoils the magic if things like that go wrong in this,
There was trying to get the rat up the wire. I think that got caught.
But in a way,
they made that even funnier, didn't they?
I think that was the bit where the Dane really made something of that, where it was like whack the rat, and we're going to keep whacking the rat, and we're going to just throw it over next door, and it was really funny because I think that's you need those elements to make the most of it,
The slapdash, sense of humour and all that high energy of when they were trying to polish the vase and stuff like that.
Definitely.
Sarah the cook and Silly Billy definitely.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like Danny
throughout.
Hendricks as Silly Billy. There's one bit where when he picked the vase up off the shelf, and I know this is such a small bit, it was done so well that he only had to get the vase from the shelf to the table, but he made it look believable that he might drop it, and then he might drop it again, and he might drop it again, and you could hear all the kids going, oh, he's going to break the vase, and it's like that was built up by everybody kept saying, don't break the vase, don't break the vase. And he took it to the next level just by the physical performance.
Well, that's exactly what it is. It's the physicality of it.
He understood that
you add to the sentiment of.
He understood that it's not just about what you say; it's how you deliver that. And
the worst bit for me was when Sarah the cook was actually polishing it, and she was like slapping the feather
with
duster
her eyes
around
shut,
all over the place.
and that was
exactly.
It was so funny.
Oh, what?
But it was so well made. You can just know that they'd worked on that, and they'd worked on it. You can just and I think that And one thing I will say is we're at the end of the run when we saw this production. We're like 6 weeks down of this panto, and they still were performing at the right level. There was no energy drop. I felt
they've only
like
got one more show to go, haven't they?
Yeah, and I just felt like yes, you might be thinking, well, we're that close to the end, we're just going to do a good one, but they've got to pay an audience. They've got to. They've got to make it good, and that's the thing.
And also, one of the issues that we noticed was the feather duster came apart.
Yeah, it did, and that was funny.
So it flew off. You mean you dropped it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that was good. All good fun.
Yeah, definitely.
Moving on to our next segment, which we say, call this a show. Is there any comparisons? Any final words you want to say?
I suppose we're seeing the yin and yang of productions. The differences I've seen is, you could say, manufactured, mass-produced production by a national production company that are putting on 20 productions
I'll just say
year.
what the company was. It's
Crossroads Production Company.
Crossroads, isn't
Crossroads.
It? Yeah, that's
Crossroads, isn't it?
No, Crossroads, because I made that gag about...
Oh yeah, shaky set. Yeah, so Crossroads Pantomime Company, they are doing probably approximately 20 productions across the country, and I think there's at least 4 or 5 Snow Whites happening, which for me feels like it's manufactured, and it's very obvious that is how it's being done. And also same with the set. After seeing this production, after seeing Dick Whittington in Nottingham with the amount of attention to
Nottingham
detail.
Nottingham
Playhouse with the amount of attention to the set and the script and everything in there. I actually feel that Snow White was very tired. I feel like the set was very tired, and it was also confusing because some of the scenes they chose and picked to depict each place were very just that they were there, but they weren't definite. Whereas I felt that Dick Whittington had spent that much time, even if some of the set they had brought in, because they might not have used everything that they made themselves, but they made it look like every scene mattered in every way. It wasn't just about the performance, it was also the staging of it and the bits they used on stage and the props and everything. Just felt rich and well put together, you know.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I just agree with all the sentiments you've just laid out, to be honest. I feel like a good homegrown pantomime is far superior than one that's pretty much everywhere. I think I'm more likely to say, if you want to go and see a pantomime now, go to not just like Nottingham Playhouse, but a playhouse.
Exactly.
You know,
Go to one where
Leeds Playhouse or whatever.
It's
Go
like
to your local
Mansfield.
playhouse
Like,
does it themselves.
Yeah.
Rather than go to one of these big books things that have celebrities, because chances are you're not going to get
because they're relying on
quality.
the celebrity rather than actually the performance, you know.
Yeah,
in
pretty
a way,
much.
you know.
Now, Richard, I want you to give me a review rewatch scene. Which one would it be?
I'd like to see it all again, to be honest.
Okay.
And I know that's like, it's probably a get out, but I just enjoyed it. It made me feel happy, and it takes a lot for me to be happy about Panto because I've seen a lot of good ones, and this is, you know.
And you're an old miserable queen.
I am an old miserable queen, and this did make me happy, and I enjoyed it. So yeah.
What would I see again? I'd be tempted to say polishing the
polishing the vase.
Yeah, the Ming vase.
Yeah.
Scores on the doors now, please, Richard, for Nottingham Playhouse's Dick Whittington. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being a perfect dick and 1 being stuck in the Rat King's sewer. What's it going to be?
Well, it's got to be a 10 out of 10, to be fair.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's fine.
It deserves it. The amount of effort gone in.
I was going to give it a 9.5. And the reason why it's 9.5 is, I think, simply down to the issue with the cat, maybe.
Yeah.
I think, you know,
fair enough.
It's so much better than the previous
Yeah, I think poles apart.
previous pantomime. Yes.
Totally.
So, what sound effect will you be choosing from the following? A complete train wreck, tumbleweed, an audible shrug of the shoulders, a slow clap, a pleasant applause, or a standing ovation. What will it be?
I'll give it a standing ovation.
I'm going to give this a standing ovation as well. So there we are. That's our discussion of Dick Whittington. We hope you found it insightful.
If not, entertaining.
Coming up over the next few episodes, we will be discussing Rebus, a game called Malice,
The Beekeeper of Aleppo,
and The Verdict. That's it for this week, folks.
If you'd like to drop us a message, please email us at upstagedowstagepod@gmail.com. Remember, you can always join in the chat to share with us your views on a production.
Also, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you get every episode the second it's released. And we hope you join us again for another instalment of Upstage Downstage. That was the best dick in Nottingham.
I'll struggle to see another dick like that again.